Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm going to quit FileMaker here real quick. So let's just assume that no one knows anything about JSON. So how would you explain what JSON is? Someone the other day goes, "Is JSON a programming language?" And I'm like, "Well, it's kind of ugly. I can see where you might think that, but not really." But Kyle? What is it? How would you explain it?
So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So it's a string of text that you can extract data out of. So it's a collection of data that you can transfer data from one application to another.
Let me help with it. Can I help just briefly for a second? I want
Please.
this is JSON is a text file. A text file, like a Word document file, it's a text file. It's one of those files that has TXT on them. And in there is text. Like a line at a very basic level, it's just a list of text items. It's not a programming language, it's not a program, it's not an application, it's not any other fancy stuff. It's a text file. A text file organized in a specific way. Like XML, at the end of the day, is really a text file. But kind of similar concept, right, Kyle? Kind of like
that is correct.
yeah. So XML is like a text file, but it's organized in a certain way with little slashes and stuff. Doesn't matter. We'll talk about all that.
Right.
At the beginning, it's a text file with a block of text, and it's commonly used to, this is what Kyle said, to exchange information from one service to another service. Like when we invoice people for a copy of our training or something, we talk to PayPal. There's some communication, but if we send the information back and forth, typically it goes in the form of JSON, a block of text, formatted with little slashes and stuff. It doesn't matter. That's what JSON is at the most beginning level. See, that's why I'm here, keeping it really basic, Kyle, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. Now, I'm going to let you show your screen and move on.
There we go.
Oh, Stu has a question. Does JSON have an advantage over XML? What is, in your opinion, what is your advantage, you think?
So JSON is much simpler, easier to learn than XML. And plus, it's much easier to get data out of JSON than XML. So yeah, when I first started, it was all about XML because JSON wasn't really a thing. But nowadays, ever since FileMaker 16 came out, it's been a much bigger part of our world.
Okay, so let me, to Stu's part, everything Kyle said is absolutely, I totally believe it to be absolutely 100% the truth. What I do want to say real quick on behalf of this, and for those of you asking about XML, both of them are a way of organizing the data hierarchically. For example, and Kyle will probably show this, like I say, hi, I'm Richard Carlton, and then you have attributes about Richard Carlton, like my address and my phone number. And so those will be all hierarchical attributes. It's a way of associating like a parent idea, almost like a relational database, a parent idea or element of data, and then like children, and then maybe grandchildren. XML does that. JSON does that too, but XML is very wordy. I mean, there's a lot of little extra bits of slashes and brackets and this and that. JSON is more slim and trim. Like imagine Richard at 80 pounds with less girth, right? That would be, I'm XML, right? So XML, big, and then if I suck all, I'm down and very thin, then that's JSON. How's that? Is that better? How's that?
Perfect.
For you, for Kyle? You can indicate that a piece of data is, yeah, there we go.
String number. Right?
Okay,
yep,
Stu, don't be nice, Stu. I love you, Stu. Don't be nice to me. It's very scary, but I'm trying to make it real for people. So there you go.
Stu did have another question earlier on. He asked, when does it make sense to use it, and when is it overkill? So it makes sense to use it pretty much always.
Okay.
So overkill, however, there is an overkill. That's when you have too much data that you're trying to store in your JSON object. If you have megabytes of data in your JSON object, that is overkill. You never want that much because it takes way too long for FileMaker to parse through all of that text. So whenever you have a big block of text like JSON, you want to keep it small and minimal. So that way it's going to process much faster.
But XML is easier to implement in HTML pages with tags, question mark, is what Latchkin asked the question?
Is that Not really, no. So JavaScript, JSON is part of JavaScript, and JavaScript has parsing functions that parse out to JSON and extract the data from it, which you can use in your HTML web pages. So again, XML is much more difficult to parse out. JSON is much simpler and easier and much lighter weight, as Richard was saying. Yeah, one of the first questions that always comes up is, what is JSON? Why do I want to use it? What is it good for? So as we were saying, that it's great for passing information from one application to another. So I'm just going to do a couple quick demonstrations here. So what can you do with JSON? So here I have an example that uses an API. It downloads JSON from a web service. So here I have just a zip code, and I want to look up the city, the state, the country, and I want to be able to see what the URL is and what the JSON it's passing me is. So then I just click look up, and now all of a sudden, just from the zip code, it was able to go out to the web and look up the zip code with a URL, with this URL. So this URL sent this JSON data, and from that JSON data.
So we send this out, okay, to this
Correct.
service. And some people say, well, why should I use JSON? Well, let me say it another way. The whole world is using JSON, so if you don't use it, you'll be one of the few people who's not using it. Okay, so it's already a standard, right? And so then
Yes.
Zapotamus, they sent us back this. This is what came back to us.
Yes. So
Okay.
this is that URL. So you can see this URL, I just pasted it in here. And from that URL, I'm able to get this. So you can see there's my matching zip code. So the 98058 matches. So that's from right here. That's what we looked up. We looked up the zip code in the US. So this is the country we're looking in. So you can put Canada there, and then information you want from Canada. Or in this case, we're doing US 98058. And it looks it up and it finds the state. So we have the state of Washington. We have Renton, Washington. It even gives us longitude and latitude if we wanted to map it. So really cool service. It's free. There's no API key, so it's a very simple, easy API to work with. So in this case, let's just do Renton, Washington, and we'll look that up. So this, when I use just the city and the state, I'm getting all these zip codes, and I'm getting all this information back from that API using this URL. So really cool. Then if we go back, just a couple more demonstrations of why we want to learn JSON. What is it good for? So here you can see I have 0 records, and this is another free API. It just downloads a bunch of facts about cats. So I'm just going to click this button, and just like that, I now have 332 records, and I can see it all right here. It gives me the length, and it gives me different facts about cats. And it uses JSON to pass all that data and downloads it into FileMaker.
Where's the JSON? I don't see any JSON. Where's that at?
So if I go into the data viewer, I think, oh no, okay, so let's go do this real quick. Delete all records, delete all, okay. So now we're gonna go open up the debugger, and we're gonna click this button. So here we're stepping into the script about importing facts. And here it's going to this layout in case we're on some other layout. And then we have the URL. So it's looking up HTTPS.
Okay, so
let
me edit along on the way here. So line 2 is basically we're setting up the URL to go to the cat thing, but we're not executing it. So we're just basically building a text string which will build a URL for the browser, right? That's in there.
Correct.
And then,
yeah, so
yep. And then
you go into here, so you can see what that URL is. It just says HTTPS / and then it has this URL and a limit of 400 records. So I don't want any more than 400 records.
Yeah, 400 cat facts is plenty of cat facts.
Yeah.
So then we say, do it, but there will be a result that'll come back, and we're going to stick that result into another variable right there, right?
Yep, the variable's JSON.
Yep.
So we step into it, and then we get this JSON result, and this is not human readable.
Okay.
So this is what we're talking about, a string of text.
Yeah, we
would one big block of text. It's block your text file.
Yeah.
So that's what we're getting.
Yep. It's basically a block of basically in
yeah.
plain.
Nobody can read that. We can't look at it and easily understand what the heck that means.
So how do we make it? How do we make it human readable?
So that's where we take this, we add it to our watch. We're going to get rid of this other stuff we don't need right now. And then we're going to go into this, and we're going to use a new function, or another function, I mean. It's in, I can type. So this is called JSON format elements. And what it's going to do is it's going to separate this out. It's going to format it in a way that we can understand this and we can read it. So we have our collection of data, and this data is an array of facts and links. So we know it's an array because we have this box bracket, and JSON objects are defined by these curly brackets. So anything between these curly brackets is a JSON object. So this is one JSON object within the array.
But it's kind of like loosely similar to a record. Is an object a record always, or just sometimes, or what is that?
So in this case, this one element in this array is a record within their system. So it's downloading a whole bunch of records. These are a whole bunch of records from their system and their database. And this is just one of those records. So all of these records come together in an array of records. So again, this is where the array starts with a squared bracket. And the objects, this is one of those records from their system, is defined by these curly brackets on either side of it. The fields, these are the fields in their database. So they have a field called fact and a field called length. Inside of that field, fact, we get this text here. So we're trying to get the information from their server. So they give us a bunch of records. We got fact and length. And so we know that this string of text here is the length of 319 characters. So that's what the length represents. And that's in case you have fields on your layout. Maybe the field isn't long enough to support 319. Their API actually allows you to return only smaller lengths of facts so that you can fit it all on your screen. So you can filter by that in their API. So anyhow, so it downloads all of these records, and then we're able to use FileMaker's functions to be able to parse all this data out.
So the JSON format element, its entire job is to make it human readable. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, it's to make it human readable. It's also to troubleshoot. If there's a problem with this JSON somewhere in here, when you format it, it's like, say, I'm just going to do this just so I get an error. So evaluate. There's a problem at line 1 and column 1 of the JSON that's returned. It can't parse that out.
So the JSON format element is a FileMaker function. It makes it human readable, and it also checks for proper JSON formatting
syntax.
Yes.
It's looking for the syntax and making sure that it is a valid JSON. So if it's not valid JSON, then it's going to return an error. If the error is further down in the JSON, like a comma is missing or something, it's going to tell you what line that error is and what column that error is in that JSON text that we're trying to format. So now if we go into this a little bit further, we're going to use this JSON list keys, and that's going to give us our found count. So if we go over here, we have a found count of 332. And to show how that works, so JSON list keys, this is where we're taking our JSON. We're not going to give it a key. We just want the outside keys. So if we do this, we get JSON list keys values. Oh, data. Okay, so we do need a key. So we got to dive into this a little bit. We need to go to that data in the JSON. So if I put data there, evaluate it again, now we get this big long list of IDs for our array. So remember, there's that array with all the facts, all the lengths. Each of those were individual records. And so each of those individual records gets a number. And that gives us our list keys for the array. And we're able to combine this with value count. So go over here like that. And now we can have FileMaker count the values in that array. And that's how we get our found count. And then we continue to loop through it. So next we're defining our loop count. So we're giving the loop variable a value of 1 because it doesn't exist yet. So if I go over here, we have our loop count of 1. And then as we go in a little bit further, we're going to want to extract the JSON fact for that.
Are we following this, everyone? Are we following this? Very, very important. So he calls it import, but we're not really running an import command. He's looping through the JSON. And if it was XML, you do the similar sort of technique. But JSON's kind of the standard, and so it's looping through and then creating records as it goes, right?
Correct. Yeah, so it's looping through that array that we previously saw, and then it's getting the data. So I'm extracting it one record at a time so that we can parse that data. So then we go through here, we check if it's valid JSON, which is a custom function I've added into this collection. So when you get this demo file, you'll have that function.
Okay, we have a relevant question right now. We're not going to.
Sure.
You're going to keep going in a second, but why don't you answer this question? So Dennis has a question. Dennis says, "What is the best way to handle special characters like quotes and returns that are in a string of JSON data?"
Oh, that's a wonderful thing about the JSON functions is they'll escape all of those invalid characters for us, so we don't even have to worry about that.
Well, okay, when you say
so
escape,
you can see,
is it like escape from prison, or I mean, like, does it convert them? Okay, back up. Does it convert them, or does it just remove
it swaps them out with a? So there's a whole bunch of characters that it knows about. So if there's a return carriage, it's going to have this little backslash character, which is an escape slash, and then it'll have an R in front of it if it's escaping a return carriage. If it's a tab, it's going to do the same escape with a T in front of it. It has all of those in here.
When we did get what was it? What was the one for human readable? Was it JSON element? What was the one?
That's JSON format elements.
Format element. Does it convert all those inline thingies? It must, right?
Yeah. So if I go back here and okay. So let me.
Yeah, you lost it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not trying to screw you up, Kyle, but it's a really good question. A really good question, and I want you to answer it. Oops, sorry. There we go.
All right, so we're just going to make this readable. So the backslashes have already been taken out of here, it looks like.
Yeah, there's no back. Okay, there's apostrophe right there. Apostrophe, or you guys like to call single quote, but apostrophe.
Right.
And
well, yeah, this should still have the escapes in it because it's still in JSON format. But when we extract an element using JSON get element, it's going to remove the quotes or remove the backslashes and whatever escaped characters.
Oh, right there. By crossing its eyes. Very nice.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Very nice. Yes. So a question from. That's the same question. Margaret just got it there. Thank you, Margaret. So yeah, very informative. This is good stuff. All we have to do is slow Kyle down.
Right. Yeah. So that's part of today's main focus is to slow me down.
It is. It is. It really is. So keep shooting questions along the way. We're going to continue. So we're having a script that grabs the whole block of text and we're looping. Looks like this, if you can see it. And it's creating, every time it's creating a new record, 300 and whatever times, right?
Yeah, 332 records
right
here. So I'm going to go to current here. There's the two variables that are going to pop up here when I go past this next one. So here we're getting the JSON fact and our length. So these are the two variables that this one line created. So this is using another custom function that I have in this collection. So JSON get elements as variables. It's looking at the JSON fact, which is this variable right here, and it's pulling out this element and the length. So those are the two elements within this JSON object, the length and the fact.
Is that the length in characters?
So yeah, in their API, it has the fact and then it has the length of characters within that fact. And in their API, you can filter the lengths so that way you can just get ones that are under 200 characters so that it'll actually fit in the field you're trying to display that data.
So you could have short facts as opposed to long paragraph of facts. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you just want really simple, quick, easy to read facts, then you can limit the length to 100 characters and it'll return a much smaller array of records. So... and then here it's on this record, and here we're going to set the field. So there's the facts. So any quotes or any illegal characters are all going to be removed before, as it's pasting in here. All those illegal characters are going to be reverted back to their original characters. So any return carriages, any quotes, anything that doesn't belong in JSON, it's going to return it back here when it pastes it into the field. Okay, so and then here it's going to just add the length. So now we can see 319 characters. So basically that's how this works, and I'm just going to close this. It's going to loop through and do all of these facts for us. So just a quick demo of how to use an API, how to use the JSON that it feeds you, how to create records with it, and how you can integrate an external API into your FileMaker database. Are there any questions so far?
Timothy says, can you talk more about the custom function is valid JSON? Is that, are we doing?
So yeah, let's go into that real quick. It's a very simple formula. So I have all these custom functions in here. Here's the is valid JSON. And basically what this is doing is it's using that JSON format elements. And remember when I did JSON format elements with an empty value here, and it returned a bunch of nasty error text in there? See if I can reproduce that using our MBS plugin here. So if I do this, copy, paste, and put the quote in here, and remove that comma. Okay, and then we use execute. So here you can see what it's returning us. If it's not valid JSON, the very left character is always our quote. So if that last character, so we're using the left function with our formatted JSON, if that first character of the response is a quotation mark, then we know that's not valid JSON. If it's valid JSON, then it would be a quote or a curly bracket or a square bracket. So I'm just going to cancel. So that's basically how it works, and it returns a Boolean value 1 or 0. If it's valid JSON, it'll return a 1. If it's not, it'll return a 0. So that's how that function works.
Well, okay, Stu asked a real basic question. $fact and $length are created by your custom function ? Or they came from
So
the
they
service?
they are from the JSON. So
They're from but they came from the service, right? The length that came from the service, right?
Yeah, the variable names came from the elements within the JSON object. So that array had a bunch of JSON objects in it with fact and length. So it's using the fact and the length from that JSON object to use it as the variable names that it's going to create.
Right. So yeah, so $fact and $length. Basically, that data comes from the cat fact people, right? So
right,
and then from that he extracts out and does whatever he wants to do with it. So
yeah, so if I go back into here, there's the JSON. Yeah, so we have the fact.
And then the lengths is on the end. It's, I think, there's a 91. There's a 91 there and a 46 there.
Yep.
So yes, they all came from. This is what comes from the other service. When you deal with other services like PayPal or something, they say, hey, Kyle sent you money, or I sent Kyle money. It'll come from PayPal. It'll give you a bunch of crap that looks like this, and your job is to parse it out as a developer, right? As a developer,
correct?
Right? Yep. So. Cool. Then what was the other question at, okay, David Angel asked a really good question. Why, okay, I'm going to just read what he says here. Why to use JSON instead of FM list function to pass parameters within FileMaker?
So that gets, let me go into the data viewer here, and we'll explain the problems that I've experienced with the list function. So I'm just going to remove those. Okay, so list function is pretty simple. So this is kind of how I always start my list functions. I always start with list, and then I throw an empty value up here, and then I'll do a tab, which is actually the Alt button combined with the tab, and then you can do that, and then let's say 1, and then again Alt tab quote 2, and then Alt tab.
Alt tab, is that an option tab on the Mac? Is that what we're doing? Is that what?
So yeah, Alt tab, it puts a tab in here. So this is a tab character. If I just hit tab, it's going to escape this.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great.
So you use the Alt button or the Option button combined with the tab key in order to insert a tab here. And what that allows me to do is I can comment this out. Okay. and it keeps everything in line. So that's why all of my functions I format this way. It makes it very simple and easy. So now we're getting into the issue with this. Is notice my first value of my list and this third value in the list, they're not showing up here. There is no empty values down here. There's no empty value in between. And also, the other problem is if I do, say, 3, and we'll just do something like that, suddenly I have 1, 2, 3, 5, 4.
Right.
But my parameters are 1, 2, 3, 5, 4. So with JSON, this will be in the same line. It'll be in the same element.
Yeah.
And it'll have that return carriage in there. It'll be escaped out.
The Claris list function does some slightly creative editing, and I'm sure that was on purpose at the time. But if you're a programmer, like when you say 0 in the world of programming, you need a 0. It's not blank. And 0 and space, no, 0 is a 0. A space or nothing is what we call null, N-U-L-L. Okay, and that's a legit programming thing. And it means something. Null is not the same as 0. So very, very important. But that's the issue, right? So list function creatively edits your shit, and you can't be guaranteed what you're going to get. Whereas JSON elements guarantees that even if it's 0 or null or something, it's going to pass a 0 or a null, right?
Oh, I'm missing a comma. Okay. So I was just trying to show the same thing, but I'm missing a few comments here. Okay. So basically the same thing in JSON. It keeps the 3 and the 5 together in one element. So again, I can go to the very top here, and we'll go JSON.
Is there a list of valid JSON chapters somewhere? Let me help you folks out with this a little bit. So if I go to close that, I think it's. I don't know if this is what he's talking about. Not JSON Wiki, JSON. There's a web org. Well, that's Wiki. Where's the JSON? Here, JSON org. I think it was on the front page. Yeah, here you go. So is this what you're talking about, Tim? This is our. Was it Tim? Is it best way valid? Where'd that go? It was the chapters or whatever. But this is the proper syntax right here. You see this right here? So go to json.org in the default page, right? Mm-hmm. And this outlines the syntax. He's doing it. He didn't bother explaining it. Kyle's going still 5,000 miles an hour, but instead of me stopping to explain it here, you can see what they're doing, right? So it goes through all this. It's really good. So back to you, Kyle. There we go. Back to Kyle.
Yeah, Cameron also just posted the JSON Validator, which is helpful when you're trying to learn JSON. But also the JSON format elements will also validate. It'll tell you if it's valid JSON or not. And also I have that custom function in here for is valid JSON. So there's a number of ways to validate your JSON inside and outside of FileMaker. So here I just wanted to compare that list function with JSON and why this works better in JSON. Because here we have this and it doesn't, this ampersand, or if I replace this with return carriage, will that mess it up? Nope. So here's that escape/R that I was referring to before.
Yeah, everyone see that? That's pretty good.
Yeah, so there's that escape/T for the tab. So there you can see that if you have illegal characters that you're adding in here, it's going to escape them out. And then when you parse that out, so I'm just going to make this a little bit more complicated, but try to keep it simple. So JSON get element. And then here we have the JSON. So this is that JSON right here. Okay. And then what are we going to get out of that? So let's get the element of 3. Okay. And then what does that give us? There we have our return carriage and our tab. So it does swap them back out when you get your element back out of your JSON. So I hope that explains how JSON works and why it's a little better than using the list function for passing these kind of parameters.
So, I've been having people ask me about, make sure we talk about the developer certification test. I took the certification test with every question in it, and I remember there being like 4 or 5 JSON questions in it.
Yeah, there were a few.
Which will mean that in your test, maybe they take a third of the questions and give them to you as a part of the standard test. You will see probably, what's the standard test? Is it, hey, Larry, is it 60 questions on the standard test? Is that what it was? 60?
Yeah, it's 60. There's 60 questions on the test.
I would assume you'll see 2 of those would be JSON.
So here I have JSON for beginners, so very basic. I know I just showed a bunch of this, but I just wanted to create a section in here for beginners who haven't quite learned JSON yet. This is a step-by-step process of, from the very beginning, how you can learn JSON. So this will be available for everybody with my demo file. So you can see here we're just using this JSON set element, and this is starting with an empty value here, and then it's creating a key value here. So this is our key. So I put it down here, JSON set element, JSON key index or path, and then the next one is your value, and then here is the JSON type. So I kept this very simple. Just, this is absolutely as simple as it gets to create one JSON object with one key value pair. And then I did a little example here of JSON get element and how to get that element out of the JSON. So right here's this JSON field. So it's pulling it from the field, and I put the field name on top of it. So that way you know where it's getting that information from. So it's looking at this JSON here, and it's looking for name full, which happens to be this first key value. And then it's getting the value from that JSON object, and it's returning the result over here. So then we go on to the next one. So with this, we're getting a little bit more complicated. I put in the JSON format elements because we have multiple objects in our multiple elements in our JSON object. So again, a JSON object is defined by the curly bracket at the start and the finish, and everything within your JSON object is these are all your key and your values. So your key value pairs. So this could be one field within my FileMaker solution, and this is another field and another field.
So terminology. Let's hit that again. Key value pairs.
You can see on the left here, all of the text here is blue. The blue is our keys.
Key.
So those are our keys.
And this is the value.
And these are the values. All the values are in red.
And a single group of them is a key value pair, singular.
Correct.
And if you have key value pairs with an S, then you've got multiple ones. So this is a term.
Yes.
So for all of you who understand relational databases or a field label with a field content, you should understand value keys, key value pairs, all this kind of terminology. But you need to kind of understand that when you see it, what you're looking at, right? So, because this clearly to me looks like field name, value in the field name, value in the field. But yeah, very, very important. The stuff that you learn in FileMaker is relational database stuff, basics, right? So yeah.
Yep. For those of you wondering why this is colored formatted here, so I can change this just so you can see this is actually reformatted live. This is actually an MBS function. Thanks to Christian Schmidt for that.
Oh, Christian Schmidt. He hasn't been here in a while. He got
just
mad.
have to get a license, and he create a script like this.
He got mad at
register
us
MBS.
Oh, my God.
So you put the MBS script together like that, and you run it, and then you're able to do fancy things like this without getting a bunch of little pop-up messages everywhere saying, please license your MBS plugin. So you can see here's text, but because there's no quotes on either side of it, it doesn't know that it's a string. So it doesn't color it. So I'm just going to.
Cameron says Boolean, zeros and ones.
Okay.
No,
yeah, so
what about
we're about to get into those. We're going to get into those next. So speaking of null, so here we're getting into the different JSON types. So every one of these starts with an empty value. So all of the values here are empty on all of these. And well, the point is to be able to compare what happens when you use different JSON types. So here we have a JSON string with an empty value. So JSON string, empty value, it returns 2 quotes. But if you use a number, so the JSON number here, with the JSON number type, you're going to get the number 0 here. So you can see here JSON number and empty value equals 0. So that's a little different than everything else in FileMaker, where you can have an empty field that's equal to empty. In JSON, it's going to be a 0. So that's an empty JSON number equals 0. So null is another one. So here's your JSON null type. And the funny thing about JSON null is it doesn't matter what I type into it, it's going to return null. So anytime you use JSON type null, expect it to give you null as a result. Boolean, so here we have JSON Boolean. And again, we're giving it an empty value, but it's returning the value of false. So as we know in FileMaker, when we're scripting, anything with a 0 or an empty value is equal to false. Anything that's not a 0, like a 1 or a -1, is always going to be true. So, and we can even show that here. If I do 0, it still equals false. If I go in here and I say 1, it's going to be true. Also, I can actually do true, but without the quotes, and it equals true. And same thing if I type in false here, that JSON Boolean is going to make that say false. So I just kind of wanted to show everybody empty values all the way down the line. This is what you're going to get on all of them.
So Stu says, so JSON reorders output in alphabetical order by key name, question mark, is what Stu just wrote.
Yes, it does. So you can see here it starts with JSON Boolean, JSON null. So B, N, N, S, and then we have an underscore. So it always puts the underscore down here at the bottom. So that's a little different than FileMaker sort order, where it puts it.
Wait, is that so? JSON set elements does that, or JSON in general will do that? I mean, that
JSON set elements, I believe, does it, and
okay.
JSON format elements also does it. So let's just try. I'm going to comment out the format, and we'll see here JSON Boolean. So I started with JSON string.
Oh yeah.
JSON number, Boolean. These are all out of order. Now we go to here, just using the JSON set elements. We have JSON Boolean, JSON null, number, string, and then we have that empty value here. So it's in the exact same order.
Okay, so Cameron says, is that per object? So this is an object. Is this? I can't tell by formatting because I'm not good enough at this. Is this an object here, or is this an array? How big is it? What is this?
This is an object.
Okay, so
we're going to get into arrays tomorrow.
Create a separate object now, and so the sorting is within the object, right? It's not going to, like we have this A to Z thing going on, but what if we put another object down here, and then you had group this one and then this one here? It wouldn't cross-pollinate the objects, right?
So
the objects
when we get into when we add another object, we're getting into array territory. So that's what we're going to get into tomorrow. Notice here there's 22 custom functions in this table. These are some really cool custom functions, and that's what I wanted to get into tomorrow, is all of these custom functions. So, and it's a lot of them, and we'll get into all that tomorrow.
There's no way we can do all those tomorrow. So you're going to start off with arrays, and we'll do some custom functions.
We'll do some of them.
Yes.
There's also a custom function to convert tab files into JSON.
That would be probably one of the more useful things to do.
Yeah. So should I do a quick preview of that before just skim over that one? Basically, I'm going to a website. I'm going to this website. So when we demo that, I can go to that website. I can highlight the chart of colors, go to Excel. We can remove all the extra headings because each of these blue blocks has a heading on it. And then color name, hex code, etc. across the top here. We only want one header. So basically creating a tab file. Once the tab file is done, we paste it in here. We get our heading row here at the top, and then we get all these colors, the hex, and all these values. And so we use convert tab to JSON, which takes that tab file. So this is that tab file from right here, this body of text, and it converts it into JSON format.
Did you write this or
I did. This is something I created. So remember my last presentation, those of you that were there, I was showing off a new custom function that I created
Hey,
for my progress bar.
The progress bar, yeah. I was going to say,
I was
which
showing
one?
off the progress bar part.
He's going
So
5,000.
that portion of the hacks file. So it was a hacks presentation. And in the progress bar, I'm using a new custom function that I created for retrieving any color code using its name. So you can use the CSS name, and you can get the hex code, the RGB, and the decimal value from that. So this is how I created it. I created all these functions so that I could create that custom function. So I added this other parameter here, which basically, if I go back here, you can see there's 3 different variables here, or 3 different. So here I'm using that first one, which is the color, and then the next one, so that's using the color. And then the next one, I'm going to, if I do a 2 value there, it's going to organize it by hex code. Third value is RGB. So as I go through this, the 2, I'm getting the hex code. And so that could be useful for when you're retrieving hex data or anything else. And then here, I take this JSON formula that it gave me. I use this while function that I created here, this formula here. And then I actually create the JSON set element and all of these parts all the way down the line with this while function from the JSON.
All right. Well, that'll be the plan. So tomorrow's more basic. So if you, my job is to protect everyone from the wildness of from Kyle. So that's the plan.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the 4th. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.